The boarding announcement crackled through Gate 7 at JFK International Airport, cutting through the hum of conversations and the rhythmic clicking of laptop keys. Zara Williams glanced up from her phone, where she'd been reviewing quarterly reports that would make most Fortune 500 CEOs dizzy with envy. At 28, she had built Williams Tech Solutions from a college dorm room idea into a billion-dollar empire. But success hadn't dulled the sharp sting of moments like these. She gathered her leather briefcase, a gift from her late grandmother, who had cleaned offices in this very airport for 30 years, and approached the gate agent with her first-class boarding pass. The young woman behind the counter smiled warmly, scanning the barcode with practiced efficiency. "Welcome aboard. Ms. Williams, seat 2A. Enjoy your flight to Los Angeles." Zara nodded her thanks and walked down the jet bridge, her heels clicking against the metal flooring. She had learned long ago to dress impeccably for flights, not because she cared about impressing strangers, but because assumptions were made in the first 3 seconds of any encounter, and she refused to give anyone ammunition for their prejudices. Today, she wore a tailored charcoal blazer over a silk blouse, her natural hair styled in an elegant twist, diamond studs catching the harsh fluorescent lighting. Everything about her appearance whispered success, from her Louboutin heels to the Rolex that had been her gift to herself when her company went public. The flight attendant greeted her with the practiced smile reserved for first-class passengers. "Good evening, Ms. Williams. Can I take your coat?" "Thank you," Zara replied, settling into seat 2A and placing her briefcase in the overhead compartment. She pulled out her tablet and resumed working on the presentation that would seal a government contract worth $200 million. Around her, other first-class passengers settled in, mostly middle-aged white men in expensive suits, the demographic that dominated her industry and still looked surprised when she walked into boardrooms. She was absorbed in her work when a sharp voice cut through her concentration. "Excuse me, but I think you're in my seat." Zara looked up to see a woman in her 50s standing in the aisle, her perfectly coiffed blonde hair and designer outfit radiating the kind of entitlement that money could buy but couldn't earn. The woman's blue eyes held a coldness that Zara had encountered countless times in her climb to the top. "I'm sorry," Zara said politely, though her internal alarm system was already activated. "That's my seat," the woman repeated, her voice carrying across the cabin. 2A. I specifically requested it when I booked my ticket." Zara calmly retrieved her boarding pass from her purse and held it up. "I believe there's been a mistake." "This is my seat, 2A first class, see?" The woman barely glanced at the boarding pass before dismissing it with a wave of her hand. "That can't be right. There must be some error. I'm Victoria Pemberton. My husband sits on the board of this airline. I always sit in 2A. The mention of her husband's position was clearly meant to intimidate, but Zara had faced down hostile takeover attempts and government regulators. An entitled airline passenger wasn't going to rattle her. "I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding," Zara said calmly. "Perhaps you could check with the flight attendant?" "I'm confident my reservation is correct." Victoria's face flushed pink. "I don't need to check with anyone. You're obviously in the wrong section. Economy is toward the back." She gestured dismissively toward the rear of the plane. "I'm sure you can find your real seat there." The cabin fell silent. Other passengers turned to watch the confrontation, some with obvious discomfort, others with the morbid curiosity of people witnessing a car accident. Zara felt the familiar tightness in her chest, the same feeling she'd had in countless similar situations throughout her career. "Ma'am," Zara said, her voice steady despite the rage building inside her. "I paid for this seat, and this is where I'm sitting. If you have an issue with your seating assignment, I suggest you speak with the crew." "Don't you dare ma'am me," Victoria snapped, her voice rising. "I know exactly what's happening here. Someone made a mistake and put you in first class when you clearly can't afford it. Now move." The flight attendant, Jennifer, according to her name tag, approached with obvious reluctance. "Is everything all right here?" "This woman," Victoria said, pointing at Zara like she was identifying a criminal, "is sitting in my seat. I need her moved immediately." Jennifer looked uncomfortable but maintained her professional demeanor. "Let me see both boarding passes, please." Victoria fumbled in her oversized purse while Zara calmly handed over her pass. Jennifer examined both documents, her expression growing more troubled by the second. "Miss Pemberton," Jennifer said carefully, "your seat assignment is actually 12B, in Economy Plus." "That's impossible!" Victoria sputtered. "There's been a mistake. My husband specifically. I'm showing here that your original first-class seat was canceled due to a missed payment on your credit card," Jennifer continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. "The system automatically reassigned you to the next available seat." Victoria's face went from pink to crimson. "You're lying. I demand to speak to the captain. This is discrimination. You're taking her side because of political correctness." Zara had endured enough. She stood up, her 5'7" frame somehow commanding the entire cabin's attention. "Let me be clear about something," she said, her voice carrying the authority that had cowed competitors and commanded respect in boardrooms around the world. "My name is Zara Williams. I am the founder and CEO of Williams Tech Solutions, a company worth $2.3 billion. I have flown first class on this airline over 200 times in the past 5 years alone. I pay for my seats, just like everyone else, and I don't need anyone's permission to sit where I belong." The cabin was dead silent. Victoria's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "Furthermore," Zara continued, "your assumption that I couldn't afford this seat, your demand that I move to economy, and your obvious belief that someone who looks like me doesn't belong in first class, that's not a seating error. That's racism, plain and simple." "I am not a racist," Victoria protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "Then prove it," Zara said simply. "Apologize, take your assigned seat, and let this flight continue." Instead, Victoria turned to the other passengers, seemingly looking for support. "You all heard her threaten me. She's being aggressive. I feel unsafe." The passenger in seat 1A, a distinguished black man in his 60s, cleared his throat. "Ma'am, the only aggressive behavior I've witnessed is yours. This young lady has been nothing but professional." A woman across the aisle nodded. "She's right." "You were out of line from the beginning?" Victoria's face crumpled as she realized she was outnumbered. "This is unacceptable. I'm calling my husband. He'll have all of your jobs." She fumbled for her phone, but Jennifer stepped forward. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to take your assigned seat or we'll have to ask you to deplane." "You can't throw me off this plane!" Victoria shrieked. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes," came a new voice from the front of the cabin. Captain Rodriguez, a Latina woman in her 40s, stood in the cockpit doorway with her arms crossed. "You're the passenger who's delaying my flight with your discriminatory behavior." Victoria whirled around. "Captain, this woman is claiming to be some kind of billionaire, which is obviously ridiculous. She's causing a disturbance." Captain Rodriguez walked slowly down the aisle until she stood directly in front of Victoria. "Miss Pemberton, I know exactly who Ms. Williams is. Her company provides the software that runs our flight management systems. She's also a personal friend of our airline's CEO, and more importantly, she's a valued passenger who has never caused a single problem in all the years she's flown with us." Victoria's face went white. I didn't know." "Your ignorance is not an excuse for your behavior," Captain Rodriguez said firmly. "You've disrupted this cabin, harassed a fellow passenger, and created an unsafe environment for everyone aboard." "I'm grounding this flight until you're removed." "You can't do that," Victoria protested, but her voice was barely a whisper. "I absolutely can, and I just did." Captain Rodriguez keyed her radio. "Ground control, this is Flight 447. We have a passenger removal situation. Please send security to Gate 7. The next 20 minutes passed in tense silence as airport security escorted Victoria Pemberton off the plane. Her threats and protests echoed through the jet bridge, but nobody in the cabin seemed sorry to see her go. As the plane finally pushed back from the gate, Captain Rodriguez made an announcement over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to apologize for the delay. This airline has zero tolerance for discrimination of any kind. Every passenger on this aircraft deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their race, religion, or background. We're honored to serve you all and will make up time in the air to ensure you arrive in Los Angeles on schedule." The cabin erupted in applause. Several passengers approached Zara to offer their support and express their disgust at Victoria's behavior. The flight attendants went out of their way to ensure her comfort for the rest of the journey. As they flew over the heartland of America, Zara stared out the window at the patchwork of lights below and reflected on the encounter. She thought about her grandmother, who had faced far worse discrimination with far less protection. She thought about all the young girls who looked like her, watching from the sidelines and wondering if there would ever be a place for them at the table. Her phone buzzed with a text from her assistant. Saw the news story about the flight incident. Are you okay? The Williams Tech PR team is standing by if you need them. Zara smiled and typed back, no PR needed. Sometimes the truth speaks for itself. When the plane landed in Los Angeles, Captain Rodriguez personally thanked Zara for her grace under pressure. You handled that with more dignity than she deserved, the captain said. My grandmother always told me that how we respond to ignorance says more about us than the ignorance itself, Zara replied. But she also taught me never to let anyone make me smaller to accommodate their prejudices. As Zara walked through LAX toward her waiting car, her phone rang. It was her business partner calling with news about the government contract. Zara, you're not going to believe this. The Department of Defense just fast-tracked our proposal. Apparently, someone on their board saw the news coverage of what happened on your flight. They want to work with a company led by someone who stands up for what's right. Zara laughed, a sound full of joy and vindication. Sometimes, she said, the universe has a beautiful sense of timing. Later that evening, as she sat in her Los Angeles penthouse overlooking the city, Zara received an email from the airline's CEO. It was a formal apology, a lifetime platinum status upgrade, and an invitation to join their board of directors to help implement new anti-discrimination training for all employees. She also received a letter forwarded from Victoria Pemberton, a grudging apology that reeked of legal coaching and self-preservation. Zara deleted it without reading past the first paragraph. Instead, she opened her laptop and began typing a blog post that would go viral within hours, shared by millions of people who had experienced similar moments of discrimination and prejudice. Today, someone tried to tell me I didn't belong in first class because of the color of my skin, she wrote. They were wrong about where I belonged, but they were right about one thing. I don't just belong in first class. I belong in boardrooms, in leadership positions, in spaces where decisions are made and futures are shaped. And I'm not going anywhere. The post ended with a photo of her boarding pass from the flight, Seat 2A, first class, accompanied by a simple message. Success isn't about proving you belong. It's about never forgetting that you do. Within a week, Williams Tech Solutions had received over 50 new partnership inquiries. Victoria Pemberton's husband resigned from the airline's board amid the public relations nightmare, and Captain Rodriguez was promoted to chief pilot, becoming the first Latina woman to hold that position in the airline's history. But the real victory, Zara knew, wasn't in the business deals or the public vindication. It was in the hundreds of messages she received from young women of color who said her response had inspired them to demand the respect they deserved, to take up space in rooms where they'd previously shrunk into corners, to believe that their dreams were not just possible, but inevitable. Sometimes, the most important battles are fought at 30,000 feet, in the space between where people think you belong and where you know you have every right to be. And sometimes, standing up for that space changes not just your own flight path, but the trajectory of everyone watching from the ground, dreaming of their chance to soar.